Oh, I change flies a lot. That's one of the biggest things I notice when I go even fishing with buddies that are great fishermen themselves and anglers themselves. I change flies a lot.
Like what are your determinants on changing the fly?
If I put it through 5 times and they don't like it, I put on a new fly.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haigh. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by J.P. Ross Fly Rods, makers of happiness, one rod at a time. Get outside and simply fish. And Harvest Hosts, offering exceptional RV camping at 2,500 breweries, wineries, farms, and more nationwide. Coming up on the Destination Angler, we have a special episode that I'm particularly excited about on climate change with 2 scientists from Trout Unlimited to help us debunk fact from fiction and understand just what in the world is going on with our climate these days and what we can do about it. After that, we're headed to South Florida and the Everglades to check out the amazing tarpon, snook, and trout fishing opportunities there. Be sure to backcast to catch the last episode of the Destination Angler on the lower Sacramento River with Hogan Brown, fly fishing guide and VP of Marketing for Loon Outdoors. Hogan shares why stripers will rock your world and a great story of a 50-pounder who blew up his rod. Hey, if you like the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast, and be sure to check out the Destination Angler Facebook and Instagram pages where we post pictures of the places we cover and the top flies recommended by our experts. Today, our destination is the South Platte River in Colorado, and our guest is competition fly angler Russ Miller, who also happens to be the Director of Marketing at Umpqua Feather Merchants. Starting in the mountains around South Park, the South Platte is an extensive river system known for highly technical tailwater fishing that is sure to challenge the most experienced fly angler. Sections like the Dream Stream, 11 Mile Canyon, Spinney Mountain, Cheeseman Canyon, and Deckers have captured the imagination of anglers the world over who come here to test their skills against some of Colorado's most educated trout. Russ considers himself a lucky guy, having worked in the industry for 16 years as a guide, fly shop junkie, and marketing guy for some big names like Sage, Rio Fish Pond, and now Umpqua Feather Merchants. He's also represented the U.S. at 6 World Fly Fishing Championships. So buckle your seatbelts while Russ gives us a grand tour of the South Platte River, along with some stories and tips from his years as a competition angler.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, Russ.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Yeah, you bet. So we got a lot to talk about, man, because this is a big river system with some incredible trout fishing. I think we could probably do a show on each of these sections, but hey, let's see how far we get today.
It'll be a great introduction for your listeners at the very least.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, let's just start. What makes the South Platte River system just so incredible and such a mecca for fly anglers worldwide?
Yeah, it's got so many unique characteristics to each of the sections that you can visit. And they're all within an arm's reach of the Metro Denver area and Colorado Springs. So, you've got a lot of the major fly shops on the Front Range that promote these various sections of the South Platte that have really added to the notoriety. And, the fish themselves are absolutely awesome fish to go challenge yourself with, whether you're going to be fishing the meadows or you're going to be deep in a canyon. So I think that's one of the things that makes the South Platte so unique and kind of have that draw. It's almost like a lot of the old angling clubs where you could kind of have your scorecard at the end of the day where it's like, fish beat E3 and recorded four fish up to blah, blah, blah size. And, you can look at someone's Instagram photo and be like, oh, you got that out of this hole. That's really? A really good fish. Okay.
So it's sort of that well known. Will people really have this completely kind of wired or dialed in like that, huh?
And a lot of, yes, especially when we're talking about like Deckers and Cheeseman and even sections of the Dream Stream.
Okay. Well, let's zoom out just for a second. So give us a sense of, we're talking Colorado here, so there's endless fishing opportunities, but like, how would you sort of describe the fishing opportunities in this part of the world?
Yeah. So you've got a river system that starts in the high country and then goes through a series of meadow creeks and holding reservoirs. You know, you've got the alpine environment that drains down into Antero Reservoir. And then you've got a section of another meadow between Antero Reservoir and Spinney Mountain. And then below Spinney, you've got the fabled Dream Stream section. And then below that, you've got 11 Mile Canyon. And then you've got another reservoir. And then you get Cheeseman Reservoir. And then you get Cheeseman Canyon. And then you get Chatfield Reservoir here on the Front Range. And then you've got an urban fishery right through downtown Denver that's like world-class carp fishing. So, I mean, as far as like a diverse range, I mean, it literally covers everything. And each section of it is super unique, including the reservoir fishing. And then you've got like world-class carp fishing on top of it. It's super cool. So that's like the 10,000 foot view of the drainage that you can almost kind of choose any style of fishing, and you could go find a section of the South Platte to go do it on.
Okay, I want to definitely peel the onion on that style question and figure out, you know, what kinds of styles we're talking about here. But if you could talk about some of the feeder streams, like, there's Tarryall Creek, am I saying that right? And a couple others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the feeder streams are super unique. They're a lot of fun. You know, if you've been down fishing Deckers and Cheeseman or 11 Mile all winter and don't ever want to look at an indicator again, it's an awesome opportunity to celebrate some really fabulous hatches on some more intimate water that allows you to really kind of like fish dry flies or put on a dropper if you're feeling like you're not getting them to come up the way you think they ought to be. So again, like some of the feeder creeks too, boy, we don't want to go into too much detail on these because you could do a whole episode on the stuff that drains into the South Platte.
Sure.
I mean, again, from what's available to the Front Range angler, the South Platte offers so much diversity, and you know, a river like Tarryall, I love to fish that. It's a great mix of a lot of little wild brown trout and some good ones in there, but some really fabulous hatches on that river too. And you know, from the Metro Denver area, you're sub 2 hours for most sections of it.
Yeah, that's great. And is it mostly meadow fishing up through South Park? Is that where you're hitting the Tarryall?
Yeah, so you're coming into South Park, and yes, exactly. And you can kind of branch off either upstream or downstream from its junction at 285 there.
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to go downstream, and there's Tarryall Reservoir, which is down there, which is a great trout and pike fishery. And there's some really good fishing down below the reservoir too. And that's where I tend to go. And there's some intermittent public and private sections through there, and some awesome access and good fish.
Okay, so there is some public access up there. You can get in, huh?
Yeah.
Good. I'd love for you to just sort of walk us through some of these different reservoirs, tailwaters, canyons, and just give us a sense of, you know, what's the fishing like? You know, what kind of techniques are you using? You know, are they pretty much the same? Are they always all different? Do they fish the same? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the way I'd probably break this out for the listeners is still water fishing opportunities, and we'll talk about Spinney Mountain Reservoir and Antero Reservoir predominantly there. And then you've got kind of the meadow fishing, right? And we'll say everything from the Dream Stream up to the 285 line that kind of runs right there by Fairplay. Okay. And then I think we could talk about the canyons, and that would be 11 Mile Canyon and Cheeseman, and I'd lump Deckers into that so we don't have too many subcategories. And then if listeners were very curious, right, we could talk about the Metro Denver section of the South Platte, because it's so different than anywhere else too.
Huh. Okay. Well, let's dig in wherever you want to.
Yeah. I'd say let's start right at the 285 line right there by Fairplay, and we'll talk about driving towards Antero Junction, and you're going to see out of your driver's window a beautiful meadow creek. And that's kind of the upper meadows of the South Platte, which is a great place. It's a place where I wouldn't take anything but a dry fly and a 3 or 4 weight rod, and just, you know, kind of let your feet explore each and every one of those bends. There's surprisingly quality fish out of there. You do get migratory fish coming out of Antero Reservoir that may hold over into there under some of those undercuts, and love coming out to a copper dropper, or even that dry fly. And that's just like a fabulous place to get kind of like, you're limited by how far you want to walk, right? There's a lot of good access up there, and
cool.
you can just kind of cover a ton of water, and you're going to get everything from 4 to 6 inch brown trout and rainbow trout all the way up to kind of that like 22 inch mark. Might be one of those big fish marks that kind of come in from the reservoir and will winter over and live over in some of those meadows for a while.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's gorgeous. And you've got another section similar to that down below Antero as well, that's above Spinney, that does get some migratory fish, depending on water conditions and time of year, obviously. But again, for anglers just looking to find a little solitude on the South Platte system, right? There's a number of public access points on there. And because it's a wide open landscape, picture a beautiful snaking meadow stream that's just got so many bends in it, right? If you were to draw a straight line and untangle it, right, you've got a ton of water to fish within, a 50-yard section, right? Because of how snaky this thing is. And so a lot of times when you pull up to these access points, there might be 2 cars there, and you can literally see across this flat landscape. It's like, oh, there's a guy there. And, that guy just popped up over there. And so you can then say, all right, well, I'm going to walk down another 150 yards or whatever the, half mile and find your solitude, right? And it doesn't take a lot of distance to have a lot of water in front of you because of how just meandering that river is, right?
Okay.
Those 2 sections are very much like that, kind of above Spinney Mountain Reservoir. And then you get below Spinney Mountain Reservoir into the Dream Stream. And the Dream Stream is appropriately named, and it's also known as the Charlie Myers State Wildlife Area. And Charlie Myers was an incredible writer and contributor to kind of the popularization of our sport. And when he passed, they renamed the Dream Stream Charlie Myers State Wildlife Area, which is an awesome tribute to a person that really grew the Denver market into what it is. And did a lot of work on the conservation side, preserving a lot of these places we love to go. The Dream Stream or Charlie Myers, it gets a heck of a lot more technical, and it does that because your chances of catching a big fish go up significantly in this section of river.
And why is that?
Well, it's a short section in between 2 reservoirs, so you get good, consistent flow and temperature coming from Spinney. And then you've got 11 Mile Reservoir down below it. And so you get migratory fish coming in out of 11 Mile that will, carry over. I remember one year we were fishing the brown trout when they're in the river. And my buddy and I hooked and landed, one of the trophy browns, 24 inches and just beautifully kiked out. Very unique looking fish. And we went back in the spring, early spring, and ended up catching the same fish living up by the dam. And I mean, you could see it had lost a lot of its spawning weight.
Yeah.
But it was the exact male that decided to winter over in that section. And it was cool to kind of pull up the photo side by side, look at the fish and see how much more weight they carry with their spawning colors on, and how silver the fish had turned, catching it in March, right? And so that's what makes that section so unique for trophy fish, is that you do get migratory fish, and anytime we use the word migratory fish, they're coming into the river to spawn. There's no secret there. I think as anglers, our responsibility is to not target spawning fish, actively spawning fish. And if you do see that, and you'll see a lot of it if you go during those times where those fish are coming out of the lake, they're very obvious. A lot of times you just want to make sure that you're fishing to non-actively spawning fish, fishing the fish that are resting, that are in that good holding water, not up in shallow gravel. And that's ethical responsibility we all should know, and
100%.
Because those are our future fish. I mean, the cool thing is that a lot of those brown trout and rainbow trout are naturally reproducing with supplemental stocking done in the reservoirs. And so, those are our future stocks we get to fish for. And a lot of these fish will drop back into the reservoir and re-beef back up and come in the next year, right? So if we as anglers want to maintain a true big trophy class of fish, let them spawn and make sure you successfully release them so they can make it back out into the lake and come back in a little bit bigger even for us to have an opportunity at. But so anyway, outside of the shoulder seasons on the Dream Stream, right, you have great summertime hatches there. The trico hatch there is absolutely phenomenal. And you get a lot of these bigger fish that come in that stay and will be actively feeding, right? And so it's a lot of sight fishing opportunity in there, which is super fun. So you're able to sight fish in that 18 to 22 inch range. And anytime you're doing that with really small flies, the fun level steps up a little bit.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's one of the really big draws. And, guys like Landon Mayer have really pioneered the Dream Stream for what it is, and put in a lot of hours to help anglers crack the code. And, you mentioned I'm director of marketing for Umpqua. So Landon's one of our signature tires, and a lot of the flies that we have in our catalog and at our dealers, especially along the Front Range, are literally built for the scenarios that he's finding on the Dream Stream, right? Like his mini leech jig is an awesome lead fly pattern, right? So you don't have to use additional split shot. And you'll get a lot of those bigger fish that want that high protein meal or that little, downsized micro streamer. Sure. And then some of those little midge imitations that go along with that they're used to feeding on these chronomids all summer long. And then when they come in the spring or fall, right, like that type of fly, those kind of jumbo midges from what we would normally think of a tailwater midge looking like, is a really great meal for them. And then those very, imitative midges for those fish that have been in there and have gone back to feeding in the river.
Okay. Like how you say jumbo midge, how big?
Like you'd fish a chronomid, right? Like, 12s.
Okay.
And normally when we talk about midges, an 18 is going to be big for the South Platte.
Okay.
And I like to do the same thing, like I run a lot of Prince nymphs in the river, and it's simply because it's a great attractor pattern that they're used to seeing out in the reservoirs too, for a variety of different things it's imitating. It's one of my confidence flies when I go to the Dream. I love running the micro streamer program. Those leeches and stuff like that, I think are awesome. And especially when you're talking about big fish, I love playing the game where you're going to play big fish, small fly, right?
Right.
But sometimes you've had enough heartbreak where you're just like, I want a hook that will stick when I finally get a fish to bite. And so those leeches are really great for that too.
Okay.
Hi everybody, this is JP from JP Ross Fly Rods. We're happy to support Steve and sponsor the Destination Angler podcast. Do us a favor and check us out on our website, smallstreamflyfishing.com. JP Ross Fly Rods and Company has been around since 1997. We've made thousands of fly rods with one purpose, helping you get outside and be happy. So check out our line of small stream fly rods like our Muir 7-foot, 5-piece, 3-weight E-glass, our famous Beaver Meadow series of rods starting at 5-foot 2-weight, and don't forget our 6.5-foot 3-weight 4-piece, and now our new Beaver Meadow S-glass, 6.5, 2-weight, 3-weight, all the way up to 8-foot 5-weight, all in 4-piece. Check us out, please, at smallstreamflyfishing.com. And thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you on the water.
Okay, so talk about a leech pattern. Like how big are those? Like explain a little bit how they're tied, because they're a little fluffier than like a woolly bugger, aren't they?
Yeah, like Landon's leech that he ties, that I really like to fish, has a micro pine squirrel tail to it, and it's on a jig hook, so it'll ride hook point up, and it's got a little bit of flash on the underbody and an ostrich collar, right? So it provides a little bit of movement right behind that tungsten bead, And then a lot of movement out the back with that pine squirrel tail as it rises and falls, even if it's underneath an indicator or fished on a tight line rig. It just allows that fly to have a ton of movement and a lot of control over how it moves from the angler. And then you can fish it in tandem, right? So it can be the attractor that might, rush a fish over to the rig and then say, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then they see, that small little technical offering behind it, or another, kind of great attractor fly behind it to make them jump at it.
Okay.
So those leeches are awesome patterns. And we'll talk about that as we talk about the still waters and the canyon fishing too. It's kind of one of those must-have in your box flies for the South Platte region. Is a good leech pattern in my opinion. Yeah, and I'll fish them in all black. I fish a lot of kind of brown leeches, and I like to fish purple leeches too. Those are kind of my kind of favorite colors up and down the drainage there.
And how are you fishing a leech? Like, for instance, in a river, are you sort of dead drifting it along the bottom like a big stonefly, or are you giving it some motion? What are you doing there?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can do a number of different presentations with it. You can dead drift it under an indicator, and anytime that indicator is in the riffle and moving up and down a little bit, that leech, you want to kind of suspend it off the bottom, and that leech is going to dance along with that. And if you picture that head falling and that tail kicking up, and then the indicator rises up on a wave, and that head rises and that tail falls down and then drops again. So you get a lot of subtle movement to it underneath an indicator even. And then, the beauty of a leech too is if you don't have the perfect dead drift with an indicator rig and it's starting to swing, that's fine too. Those are great swimmers in the water. So imparting a little movement or letting that fly kind of like swing out at the end of your drift is a great way to elicit a strike.
Okay, so leeches do swim.
Oh, for sure. They stretch out and contract, just like think of an old worm in a styrofoam cup, right? How they contract and expand like that. You're getting them doing that within the water and allowing them to kind of move in it. They're not necessarily swimming like you'd see like an emergent bug or anything like that. But there's certainly a lot of movement to those guys, and
cool.
And a very active fly. Fishing it on a Euro rig is probably my favorite way to fish them, and it allows you to fish really small light flies in tandem with this big leech to access really deep water with really great drifts. And I'll dance that one with the Euro rig a lot too, and kind of really fish it, for lack of a better word, than just dead drifting it too.
Okay, I got you. And you said something earlier about, like a tandem rig where like a big fly, small fly. And I've kind of come to the conclusion, I'm kind of curious what you think, that sometimes it's the two flies together that is really attracting that fish. Like you may be catching them all on one fly, but it's the fact that you've got both of those flies presenting in the water. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Oh, for sure. I'm sure you've experimented with this too. You're getting all the bites on the back fly, and you're like, all right, well, I'm gonna put that on the lead fly, and we'll throw on another one on the back fly, and because I've got one that's working, so I'll migrate it up to like the key position, and then like see if we can't get. And you'll do that, and you're like, the rig goes cold, and you're like, all right, we're going back, and like, bam, they're on it again. So absolutely, I think I definitely believe in your rig and hot flies and fly positioning being a critical component to getting bites.
Yeah. I mean, so often I've seen fish come up and bump a hopper, and next thing you know, I've got them on the dropper,
Yeah.
And so I kind of wonder if I flossed them, when I tried to set the hook on the hopper and missed them. But I don't know. I think the two together attracts the fish and brings them out, has them come up and take a look.
Certainly. And when we get to talking about the still waters too, that's a big part of my belief in all that stuff.
Interesting. Okay.
Hey anglers, do you own an RV? Are you tired of staying at the same old parking lot every time you go on a trip? Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about, the poorly maintained lot where you have to navigate around abandoned shopping carts, potholes, and it's always overcrowded no matter what? Well, Harvest Hosts has a solution. Becoming a Harvest Host member grants you unlimited scenic overnight stays for just $99 a year at over 2,500 locations nationwide, ranging from farms to breweries to museums and more. I mean, imagine relaxing at a gorgeous farm with fresh produce or a brewery with your favorite style of beer. And they offer a 90-day money-back guarantee, so there's nothing to lose. Harvest Host is so confident you love being a member that they are offering our listeners 15% off their membership for life with the code FISH. So head on over to harvesthost.com/join now and enter the code FISH for 15% off. Again, that's harvesthost.com/join-now and enter the code FISH.
All right, so we're at Dreamstream. We could do a whole show on the Dreamstream, I'm sure, but and below that is what, 11 Mile?
11 Mile Reservoir.
Yeah.
So all those big fish that everyone, goes and hunts in the Dreamstream, they just live in the lake. And I believe a lot of the biggest fish never make it up into the river to spawn. They spawn in the lake. And, we could touch on still waters for a second.
Sure.
Just because, like, if you really want to scratch the big fish itch, lakes are a great place to go. And you have 3 world-class still waters with 11 Mile Reservoir, Spinney Mountain Reservoir, and Antero Reservoir. And each one is managed a little bit differently. Spinney Mountain is probably managed the best for rainbow trout. That's an incredible rainbow trout and cutthroat trout fishery. 11 Mile has, if you really want to go find really big brown trout, I probably spend a lot of time at 11 Mile. And if you're looking for fish that just have an unbelievable growth rate and you want to fish a lot of hatches, I would spend my time at Antero.
Oh, great.
So they, again, like from a fisherman's perspective, or an angler perspective rather, you can kind of choose, within, a little bit longer than a stone's throw, but they're all right there, right in the line. You can choose from 3 very different stillwater opportunities, right down the road from each other.
Wow.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. And you said the state does do some supplemental stocking.
Yeah. All 3 of those are, Antero is very much a put and take fishery. So you can, if that's your thing, you can bring home fish from Antero. Spinney is a lot more managed from that perspective. And 11 Miles a put and take fishery that really does grow some trophies. And it's got a ton of depth to it. So, anglers that like to fish deep water, and cool kind of rock outcroppings with steep drop-offs, which is killer brown trout habitat. 11 Miles a really great place to go. And, for pike anglers, Spinney has trophy pike opportunities in there too, which is really cool. I've seen, we've been floating along. We do a lot of lock style drifting with a windsock behind us, and you move with the wind. And so you're fishing, you're pulling your flies kind of up current. If you think of still water as a moving body of water with the wind.
Yeah,
and,
give us that again, Russ. The lock style with a windsock. Back up.
Yeah, so this is the competition side of my life here, and it's a really fabulous way to fish when you don't have some of the crazy South Park winds that you can have. So I really love this style of fishing when you can have wind speeds that are like 15 mile an hour and under, and maybe gusting to 20. But a lot of those kind of 15 miles. So you put out like a big, there's 2 different styles. You have one that looks like a big cone in the water.
Huh.
And then there's others that look like a big apron in the water. And the whole idea is you throw them off the side of your boat. And what it does is it just slows the boat down and you drift with the wind, right? And so
okay.
The idea of I use the word still water all the time for lake fishing, and lakes get really difficult when they are no wind, right? But when there's wind, you've got to think of a lake just like you would think of a river, right? And it pushes the food, it pushes oxygen, it pushes water temperature in the lake too. And so where you'd be looking for breaks in the current for the fish in a river, it's the same thing when you're fishing lakes. And those breaks may occur in the middle of the lake oftentimes with like a wind lane or something like that. As well as a shore break that you get like on a point or a shallower, deeper, right? Because the whole reservoir start to roll with this different size of the waves that are kind of being created by the wind. So this allows you to kind of like get into the wind and fish with it and use it to your aid. versus struggling. And there is a tipping point where like, it's just too much. And I've been out with some guys that are great stillwater anglers, and they're like, dude, let's get out of the boat. This is insane. And like, like you're rocking around and you're in the middle of the wind. But the nice thing about it too, is it sets you up where you're casting with the wind. So the wind's at your back, so you can really clear your whole fly line. And if you're fishing a sinking line, then you're out of contact with it. So it allows the line to really sink fast. Right. Yeah. And then you can work a retrieve as it sinks. And whether that be a steady retrieve or a fast retrieve or a really choppy retrieve, it allows you to kind of figure out what retrieve they like and what flies they like and where they're at within the wind. And then you can start to really replicate that and find potentially a lot more success in a still water.
Oh, that's nice. Where do we go from here? Downstream, what's next?
So downstream from there, you're gonna flush into 11 Mile Canyon, which is an absolutely gorgeous canyon with wonderful hatches. It's a little bit more tucked up than some of the other stretches. You're just going up into 11 Mile, like where if you go to the Dream Stream, you can get blown off of it and jump to a Stillwater, right? Or vice versa with some of those meadow creeks, you can kind of do a half and half day, but you're really going to go to 11 Mile. And 11 Mile has some really quality fish, a lot of fish in that 16 to 20 inch range, similar to what we'll see in Cheeseman, and some really prolific hatches down in there too. So it's a great place. It fishes all year. You can fish that in the dead of winter when you find some of the sunny bends or sneak up towards the dam, right, to remove shelf ice. Yeah. But yeah, it's a wonderful fishery. In truth be told, it's one I tend to not go to as often as a lot of the other ones. And every time I go to 11 Mile, I said, you know what? I don't know why I don't come here more often. You get great prolific hatches, whether you want to, exclusively dry fly fish and kind of follow the hatch a little bit seasonal. Sure. Or you want to find a little bit more consistency in your day and nymph on the shoulder parts of those hatches. There's a lot of ways you can kind of fish 11 Mile and approach it. And it really offers a lot of rewards to the angler. High density of fish too, which is nice.
High density. Okay. And I've seen pictures of all these places. Can you describe, what's the water like at 11 Mile, like CFS? How wide is it? Is it, lots of boulders, pocket water? What are you doing down there?
Yeah, you got a good variety, right? And so again, this is kind of where, even if there are other anglers there, you don't need a mile of river to yourself, right? Like some of those meadow creeks, I like to have a little bit of water to myself to be able to, move through it, right? Because if, sometimes they're there or they're not there, or you caught the two and that was the two, right? And you could cast flies till you're blue in the face, but until another fish either pulls in or that fish decides to bite again, it's not going to do you any good. Whereas 11 Mile, if you get a pocket of water, right? And when I say a pocket, I'm referring to like a defined section of water, and because there's a lot of diversity there, and you've got these gorgeous kind of granite walls that come up to the edge of the river, and you've got a variety of pocket water within this canyon, and you've got some flat water, which is great for dry fly fishing opportunities, and then you've got kind of your classic riffle run opportunity. Like you can choose your water type based on. It's not all just steep canyon fishing, which is nice. Okay.
And what about the Dream Stream? What's that like?
Dream Stream's just going to be, you've got a lot of flat meadow water. You're looking for depth. You're looking for kind of some structure within that. It's a lot of flat water, which is a ton of fun. If you want to go fish dry dropper, or if you want to just kind of hunt those fish, sight fishing, right? Like, person with good eyes that moves slowly is going to see every fish they get to cast at, which is a ton of fun.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. And since it's a tailwater, is there a spring runoff? Does it get, big and crazy? And
yeah, sure. The Dream Stream flooded awful. I'm trying to remember if it was last year or the year before. Really big flood in there. And it experiences runoff. And it varies what that runoff looks like year to year based on our cover of snowpack and what the call is from Denver water down through all the reservoirs.
Okay.
But a lot of the times, they really try to manage it. Denver Water does a fabulous job of like trying to simulate like a fall bump to get some of the fish in the fall, or a spring
really?
bump of water.
Really? Good.
And then yeah, they'll flush it, which is super healthy for the river. Yeah, you'll get a window, and this is kind of one of the things that if you look at the South Platte as a whole, right? There's never a place you can't go fish. So like, 11 Mile might be at a higher flow than you normally would like to fish it at. You can, jump up and fish one of the lakes, or the Dream Stream is off in Fishing Rel, or Cheeseman. Like, they don't open up all the reservoirs and blow the whole system out. They'll move water from one reservoir to the next, to the next, to the next.
Okay.
And so you'll see the different levels jumping as they're starting to transfer water out of one reservoir and fill another.
Huh. Okay.
So as anglers, it protects us and allows us to kind of move around the system. Right. And then, on days when it all is really big, which is very, very rare, you've got the lakes.
Okay.
And May is a great time to go fish chironomids.
Nice. And are the flows, if you're in the tailwater, what are the flows like? Are they like dropping that up and down in a day? Or are they pretty steady for kind of days or weeks on end?
Yeah, no, this isn't, none of these are power generating reservoirs.
No power. Okay.
So we don't have a lot of those, at 12 o'clock, it's going to go, 4X.
Yeah, right.
No, we get what the surges you typically see are them drawing water from one reservoir to another, right? Okay. Or, managing their water for water calls and all that stuff. So yeah, no, we don't do any of those generated flows where it's going to get, you got to get out of the water at a certain time.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Is there a website, Russ, that you're aware of where I can go and see what the flows are doing and what the state's going to do with the water control? Oh,
sure. They don't give you forewarning on a lot of that.
Shoot.
Yeah. Unless you're a couple of the guides that have the inside track.
Okay.
Yeah. Normally I just go to, the USGS, gauging stations and get the flows there. And
okay.
You can look at the annual year and you can really get a good idea of what you can kind of expect, right? Which is really great.
Okay, gotcha. All right. And then what, Deckers is next? What's next?
So after that, the big one is going to be Cheeseman Canyon.
Cheeseman, okay, right.
And that's my favorite one. If there's Wildcat Canyon above Cheeseman, which there was the big Hayman fire years ago that really it was Colorado's largest wildfire up until last year, and it really hit the South Platte Drainage hard. It's really fine. It's really coarse granite that crumbles easily. So a lot of that just kind of flooded in and filled in a lot of the canyon, especially the Wildcat Canyon above Cheeseman Lake. But yeah, Cheeseman's kind of the crown jewel. It really is one of my absolute favorite rivers in the state. It's technical. It's close to home. It has very fit, smart, strong fish. And they see you see them, and it's, you're in close combat and you're just kind of duking it out. It gives you a lot of opportunities for feedback about what's working, what's not working. It'll reveal itself in ways that leaves you wondering and thinking you knew stuff. And then you walk away saying, I guess I don't know anything. And that's one of the reasons I really love this section of the South Platte is that it really, as an angler, it challenges you on a regular basis. And
like even a competition guy like you. Challenge, huh?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I love about it, because, we all want to figure out how to make the best mousetrap out there. And, there's times in Cheeseman where literally go around the bend and it's a whole different river than it was where you were just fishing for the last 3 hours. And you're like, why didn't I just walk up here? There's fish rising all of a sudden, and it's a ton of fun. It's a ton of fun, and to be successful, you have to be diverse. You have to be kind of willing to adapt to what the river's doing. So it's like I said, it's one of my favorites.
Okay, that's awesome. Very good.
And for I'll describe it for anglers that haven't been there. Cheeseman Canyon when you walk in, you've got the Gill Trail, and it's a short hike in, maybe 15, 20 minutes, depending on how fast you're hiking in from the parking lot. So then you're in this canyon setting with no roads around you, right? You've got 3 miles up to the dam. Yeah. And the trail drops down, 50 to 100 feet, and then climbs back up 50 to 100 feet. And when you're on one of the high points and you're overlooking, the first kind of time you see the canyon, you see this beautiful bend, and you see these egg-shaped granite boulders that are in there. They're anywhere from like the size of a couch to the size of a small house. And so it's lined and peppered with these gorgeous kind of granite boulders, and it breaks off, and it's this huge pocket water, but also these nice long runs. It's a very unique canyon. And one of the other things that makes it so challenging for anglers is that you get these big granite, rocks that I was talking about, or just know how to just abrade tippet better than anything else on the planet.
Oh man.
So when you do get some of these better fish, they seem to know what to do and how to rub that tippet just right on there to start to saw through it.
Yeah. Smart buggers, huh? Even Umquatec tippet, huh?
Well, we've got our Phantom X, which is it's the only thing I use down in there because of its abrasion resistance.
Was that a
it's our fluorocarbon, our premium fluorocarbon tippet.
Okay, abrasion resistant too. Nice. Okay. Yeah. Cheeseman, I got to get there. That sounds awesome. Challenge.
Oh, it's awesome, and the fish you can anglers that frequent that stretch of river, you can show them a fish and be like, oh, that's a Cheeseman fish. They've got a very distinct look. The state lists that there's no known stocking on record up in Cheeseman Canyon, so those are all naturally reproducing. I will put a small asterisk next to that, and the Wigwam Club, which is the private club just below Cheeseman, does do stocking.
Okay.
But the fish that are naturally reproducing in the canyon, again, like they have such a unique look to them that you can literally point at them and it's like, oh, that's a Cheeseman fish. There's no question. Really? Yeah, the rainbows just have a shape to them, a coloration to them. They got a big old black eye, like a permit. And I think of them just like a permit staring, and like, oh, no, that one only had 4 thread wraps and maybe had 6.
Right. Man, I'd love to do you have a picture of a Cheeseman rainbow? I'd love to put that out on our website.
Yeah, absolutely, I do.
All right, I'd love to get that. That's cool. Okay.
Yeah, and they're a fit fish, and they get big. The biggest I've ever seen come to hand is a 23-inch rainbow, and that's a heck of a fish in the canyon.
Oh my gosh! Russ, what's your personal best up and down the South Platte?
Oh, I've scratched the 30-inch mark out of Antero.
Really?
Lake fish.
Yeah.
And then river fish. We've gotten some big ones out of the Dream Stream that are 25, 26, but I know for a lot of the anglers that guide there and spend every day there, they'll touch 30.
No kidding. And you got a story for us on a big fish you were able to fool?
We were fishing a tournament on Antero, and we were fishing out of the boat lock style, and we were over by the island. And for people that fish Antero, they'll know what the island is. And we fished something called the hang, which is as you're retrieving your flies, the last thing you do is kind of like you bring the flies up and you let them hang just like you would underneath an indicator. And then you really kind of slowly crawl them up out of the water to kind of simulate that last little, if you were following it, like you should either eat it now or you're not going to eat it. And a lot of times we get a lot of bites right next to the boat there. And the cool thing is a lot of times you can see the bite happen, and it gives you a really good opportunity to blow the hook set and trout set it right out of their mouth versus letting them actually eat it. And anyway, we're fishing this tournament, and this fish, I watched him swirl at my first fly, and I'm fishing a 3-fly rig, which we can do here in Colorado. And swirled at the first fly, and I was like, oh my gosh, test the patience. You just hold still, don't move. And then you hand twist up just a little bit more, and he came and crunched my middle fly. And it was one of those big Antero rainbows, and this would have been in late May, and the thing ate and it turned, and I'm clearing the line off the boat, and it hits the reel, and it's jumping like a freaking tarpon. and we're fishing a weed bed that's 4 or 5 feet deep. And so this thing gets straight out of the air. I'm into my backing at this point, and finally cranked this thing back in, and, it was like a 27-inch rainbow. And I mean, one of those fish that, it's a good fish, but like, oh, there goes my backing knot now. And like, oh, he's jumping way over there and my line's pointing to the right. And you're like, that is my fish. Oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
Like just those, that's one of the reasons I love lake fishing is they're unbelievably hot, charged fish, and they've got a lot of room to run and do awesome things in a big body of water to beat you up, which is a lot of fun.
That's great. What a great story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and getting to watch it is also a blast, right?
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Well, let's pause for a minute. I'd love to hear your story. So let me ask you something. I read this quote online about you. It's something you said. You said, it's not enough about the fish. I pick up a fly rod for the experience and what it means to go through the world with the lens of a fly fisherman. Say more about that. What's that mean?
Oh, geez. This is why I don't ever like to write stuff down.
You don't remember saying that, huh?
No, I wrote that myself.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, it's for the last almost 20 years, that's how I've defined myself. It's defined so much of what I've done as a person and the places I've been. And, I look at some of my best friends and I look at some of the experiences I hold near and dear, and they're all tied to fly fishing. And so I really do think, like, if you allow yourself to be truly an angler, like, you'll meet some of the most interesting people. You'll go to some of the most amazing places, and places that I would have never gone unless I was holding a fly rod and saying I'm fishing. I find you're instantly part of a brotherhood. My wife always makes fun of me. We'll go to a party and she's like, oh, you should meet so he fishes. And it's like, oh, we could be friends instantly.
Yeah, right.
We have so much to talk about.
And you're in Colorado, like everybody fishes out there, just about, right?
Everyone fishes. There's a difference between like, yeah, no, I fish, and like, no, this is like, I really fish.
Yeah.
And people, that's the harder one where it's like, yeah, no, I fish. You're like, oh, cool. Like, tell me when you're like, oh, like I went out, once last year, man, but I really want to get out there again. Like, oh, all right. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like, when I say I fish, man, it truly is like, it's a way of life. And
it's what you do.
And that's one of the things that I think is just, it's so awesome. And, I've been lucky enough to see a lot of things and try to become as diverse of an angler as I can be. And the minute you think you're good at something, you meet someone else that, kind of blows you away. And you're like, oh my gosh, like at this one thing, you have become the master and you're as good as I've ever seen. Or you meet someone that does it completely different than you and has success at about the same rate. And you're like, oh, it's it's one of my favorite things about fishing is you're never going to be the best. And especially in the competitive world, right, where we have like a system to actually rank the best. It would be like saying you're the best salesman, but salesmen are only judged on their last sale, right?
Yeah.
So like you go back to starting at zero once you were just either the best or the worst.
Exactly.
And I told you in the pre-show, like truly, when it comes to competitive fly fishing, the highs I've never had higher highs. And then the other side of the coin is I've never had lower lows where you just want to hang up your waders, put away your rod, never pick it up again. But on the other side of it, you're just like, I'm like, how could I do this every day? How could I have this feeling every day?
Really? All right. So tell us just briefly, how do those tournaments work? Like what would generate a high? What would generate a low? What is it about those tournaments?
It all matters, I think, is it's non-recreational fishing anymore, right? So when you go to a tournament, you sign up for it, and you've either got a river or a lake session that you're going to fish for 3 hours. And a river session, you're going to get a piece of river, which is a predefined set, and it's luck of the draw, what section you get. And this is why you fish multiple sections over a tournament, not just one, so that you kind of take out the element of luck a little bit, at least. You can minimize it. And so you'll get a section of river, and that section is going to be anywhere from I've seen them as short as about 25 yards of water, meters of water,
That's
to
short.
about 150.
Really?
The tiny
That's it?
micro. That's it. And those
For 3 hours.
If they're that short, they're pretty broad then, right?
Okay.
So you're not going to get like a tumbling mountain creek that's 25 meters long. You'll get something that's broad that you could wade both sides of and fish the middle of. And 3 hours surprisingly goes fast in that scenario. And it also goes fast when you got 150 yards of water and you can't even finish it all, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I physically cannot get a fly into every piece of water that I believe there's a fish and still get up there.
And you're really just picking those streams apart then at that point, aren't you?
You're trying to maximize your catch rate. So like, this is where like competitive fly fishing, it's not about like, a lot of times when you're just out recreational fishing, you're like, oh, if I can identify they're like, oh, they're holding up in the riffles, right? Like, like when we're float fishing, it's a great example. Like, oh, like the fish seem to be in the riffles today, or they're up on the riprap, right? We can kind of like draw a pattern and then try to replicate that. When you're in a defined section of river, it's every fish, right? And I think of fish just like I think of people. Like if you were to have a group of 6 people at a table and be like, what do you guys want for dinner? What are the chances that all 6 people say like, oh, I want Italian at this one restaurant?
Yeah.
Everyone's going to say they want something different. And a lot of times it's different kinds of cuisine even. And I believe fish are the same thing. There's very few times where the hatch is that prolific and they're that keyed in on hatches in that particular river where they will all be on this fly.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
For the most part, they're all going to want to, especially when you don't have that kind of emergence, they're all going to be doing something a little different. Like this one wanted it just a little bit swung out. This one wanted it jigged. This one wanted a junk fly, right? This one wanted fast food meal calling. This one wanted something that was really delivered on a silver platter. And so you have to go through the river and think of the individuals and where these individuals might live in the water. And then you try to identify your like A water, your B water, C water. And anyway, you try to be methodical, fast, efficient, and it all matters, right? And so like you don't get that recreational fishing. Like, oh, that one got off. Not a big deal. When those get off, like sometimes, I've been edged out based on 2 centimeters. And you're like, oh, like 0 or hero, you're like 2 centimeters away, whatever. Like,
so you're measuring the length of these. You're totaling up your total length of fish.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, you have someone that's with you that measures each one of your fish. They have to be 20 centimeters or 8 inches to count, and that's worth 200 points. And then each centimeter beyond the 20 mark is worth 20 points. So big fish. It's all about getting a lot of fish, right? Every fish. And then big fish are help you with tiebreaker points, right? And that's where I said like, oh, we both caught 8. And you're like, oh, mine were this much bigger. I've had it where I've like, oh, I caught 10 fish. And the guy below me is like, oh, I caught 6, but they're all pretty big. And you're like, oh, well, there's no way you're going to get more points. And he does. Yeah. And then you're like, oh.
Oh, man. That's one of those lows, huh?
The lows are like, I don't even want to get into the lows. Lows are dark.
Let's talk about that.
Where you're, I mean, like a low would be like a world championship, right? Where you literally have dedicated a year of your life to figuring out 5 venues that you're going to fish. And you've tied flies in your basement for a year and you go there to perform your act and you just choke. And I don't know how else to say that, Mike. So you spent so much of your time preparing and like for the 3 hours that you're going to be there and you choke for whatever reason. And it's hard to know why. A lot of times.
Well, you choke or the fish just, it's fishing.
Oh,
right?
You as an angler.
Choking?
Me, like, you know what I mean? Like other people, again, there's a measuring stick now. So other people were able to succeed on the same conditions that I'm in. I was not able to succeed. So then what did I not do? What did I do? Like you go through the whole thing. Those are lows, right? And highs are when you have that same level of preparation and you meet that preparation with like, your best foot forward. And that's when like you experience a high. You're like, man,
you do well. Yeah.
Yeah. You can have, it's just fun. It's natural. It's, and then everyone's there to congratulate you, give you the attaboy.
Yeah, man. Buying you beer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's all a really great time. But like, it's and I know competitive fishing has its own set of opinions surrounding it. Right. But, I think the amount of effort you go into building. And when I think of competitive fishing, for me, I think of building my system, right? So like my lake fishing system, whether I'm going to be statically fishing flies or I'm going to be pulling flies, my dry fly setup, like, and designing flies specifically for those kind of fish we're going to be catching. Are they big fish? Are they small fish? Like, you know, because you're doing a ton of research on a piece of water. And then like my nymphing setup, right? Again, are they big fish? Are they small fish? Or are they going to be nymphing at distance? Like as we prepare for Spain next year, like they're all going to be smaller fish that are going to be that 8 to 12 inch mark, and they like to jump, right? So like, how do you go replicate that kind of scenario, flat water, where the fish want to kick off the hook immediately, right? So like, you know, you're gonna work for a long time to build those systems for those types of scenarios, and then you've got to just go execute 3 hours at a time. And like, you know, you've got lots and lots of practice, lots of time with device, lots of time playing with leaders and new materials, and and then you've got 3 hours to go execute. So it's you know, it's kind of like a band performing a show, but you just perform against the fish.
That's pressure. Now, Spain, I don't think it's Spain is trout fish in Spain. Doesn't it get to be 110 degrees in the summer in Spain?
Yeah, we're going to be up in the hills.
Up in where, Andorra, that area?
You know, I wish I knew it better.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you the names of the rivers
That's fine.
or the exact region of them.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. I wanted to ask you, you know, the first time I ever heard of or saw a competition trout fishing thing, I just thought, doesn't that just take the fun out of it to turn it into a competition? I mean,
it's the number one question people ask.
Really? Okay.
Oh, for sure. I don't know. I mean, yeah, you could make that same argument about bowling, right? Like, dude, I just like to knock down some pins. That's a lot of fun for me.
Yeah.
But someone who's been bowling a really long time is like, dude, like, if I don't knock down all of them, I'm disappointed with myself.
Right.
And you can say the same thing about recreationally golfing versus competitive golf. Like, I think it's all, I would never tell anyone like, oh my gosh, you have to compete. It makes you such a better angler. Hey, do what makes you happy. This is what makes me happy. I like, you know, my story where I got into it was I was working at a fly shop, and I thought I was the kid behind the counter that thought he knew everything. I was like, it was deadly with a bobber. I could go out and catch fish, and, you know, holier than thou, young gun, right?
Yeah.
And then one of my coworkers who was into this was like, you should come out to all these tournaments. And instantly it was like smack in the face reality. Like, oh, I don't know as much as I thought I did. And I said, well, I'd like to learn this. And like, you know, it opened up a black hole that I crawled down into. And I've never learned more about fish behavior and like the subtleties that make, you know, when you meet someone that's like and you've interviewed great anglers over the years, like Joe Humphreys and over your shows, and it's the little 10% differences that make them great versus good.
Okay.
And in the competitive world, when I started to get into it, it quickly was like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah. Oh, you know, these constant light bulbs kept going off for me. And, you know, like, I love to go recreationally fish. Like, I've got 2 young kids that, you know, we just want to go throw dry flies and have fun. And
yeah.
But and my other world is steelhead fishing and swinging flies for steelhead, which is like, it couldn't be more far from the competitive world. So I need my yin to my yang in my life.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, but I will say it makes it a lot of fun. The people you meet, again, are fabulous people. Like they're all into it at the same level you're into it. And they want to tell you about each little, each little moment of their session that like made their session either great or bad. And it doesn't matter. Like the storytelling at the end of a session is like, dude, you wouldn't believe. And and it's a ton of fun.
Oh my gosh.
From the outside perspective, I totally get it.
Yeah. Okay. So as a non-competitive angler, can you give us, you know, what are some tips from the competitive world that you could share with people who are going to go back and fish their home waters? Yeah.
I mean, like a lot of the stuff that's rolling into mainstream, you know, anglers' boxes are derived from competitive fishing. So like jig flies, you know, we have fly sale data. Like jig flies I'm sure they're in a lot of people's boxes. We sell a mountain of them now. And it's because of the competition world, right? Like they hook fish differently, they fish differently, and they're heavy and they get down to where the fish are oftentimes hiding or feeding, right? And so a lot of that like has come out of competition and just kind of like entered in, and it's been adapted in different ways, right? Like where in my head, I'm like, oh, that doesn't make any sense why you do it like that. But it works, right? And so people have taken a lot of this stuff and distilled it down for how they like to fish and how it integrates into their system, and even just some little rigging stuff. Like one of the rules is we can't use split shot or any indicators, right? So no attachments to the leader, and it's got to be one continuous leader. And so a lot of that rigging makes a lot of sense when you're talking about, it's essentially like drop shot rigs, right? But you can do that now with flies with weight built in. And so like a lot of these competitive anglers like Lance Egan and Devin Olson are Umpqua Signature Tires and fly designers. And so like a lot of their flies that are great producers, right, with like hot spots and these new hook designs with jig flies and the slender profile Perdigon that drops to the bottom really quickly, like those are just flowing in, and even how you rig those in an inline rig so they're heavier, so you don't maybe need to put split shot on to kind of deaden the whole indicator rig, so you get better sensitivity. So there's a lot of little pieces there that you can just kind of apply to how you like to fish. Right.
What about like just analyzing the stream? Like when you first get to a stream, what would you tell us average anglers?
I'll never forget. I had a 3 or 4 time world champion tell me, your first cast is always downstream. He's like, why would you scare the fish that he never gets in the water? And he's like, his first cast is always downstream. Why would you scare the easy fish that might be laying right there?
That's a great point. Yeah.
A great point. There's so many times where I'm like, man, that out in the middle looks fabulous. And you wade in, it's that one of the things we always do in competition is spend some time looking at our water and try to strategize how we enter it and exit it and move through it to minimize any kind of potential disruption to the river. And I think that's a great lesson for everyone who approaches the water, whether you've been doing it for your lifetime or you're brand new to the sport. It's like, think about where you're going to wade in and why. And some of that's from a safety perspective too, right? Like maybe don't wade right above this giant, strainer. Right. It could be dangerous.
Yeah. What about how often, are you changing flies, for instance?
Oh, I change flies a lot. That's one of the biggest things I notice when I go even fishing with buddies that are great fishermen themselves and anglers themselves. Like, I change flies a lot till I find what I like. Oh yeah. So lots of fly changes.
Like what are your determinants on changing the fly?
If I put it through 5 times and they don't like it, I put on a new fly. Boom. Right
how do you know?
Or if it's too light or too heavy a fly, I change it.
So there's got to be fish there because it's fishy water or what?
Yeah. Like I believe sometimes I can see them, right? Or sometimes I just feel like that's a spot where a fish should live. If I've been fishing other water and I've been getting fish out of water types that are similar, right? Like I change flies a lot. Okay. Maybe they want something a little flashier. Again, like that idea of 6 people sitting at a table. Like, what does that one want? And try to figure that out. And I'm a big believer in. I do a lot of fly changes. It's my personal. And there are certain flies that, if you were to open up my boxes, I tie a lot of the same fly in different weights or bead colors, even. Right. So like pheasant tail. Let's just say, because I love fishing pheasant tails. Like I'll have it in different bead colors and different bead sizes, and like, the light changed. I'm going to go with a different color bead now, right? I like changing flies. I watch a lot of people. One of the biggest things I think people could take from that idea is like, I watch so many people, they like break a fly off or something like that. They literally turned around and wade back to the bank and sit down, and it's a 15-minute exercise to change flies or re-rig, and where rigging is, I feel like, because I do it so often, it just feels like it's so secondary where I can literally be looking around and tying on a new fly. And I'm back in the water in like 30 seconds.
Really?
And
that's interesting.
I just think, and then your rest time is more intentionally rest time to sit and relax and watch the river or talk with a friend. And your fishing time is more intentionally for fishing. Right. And I think just getting comfortable with tying knots. I know it's the part that everyone hates, but if you can just get like, let's call it 3 knots, just get really good at them.
Right.
You will enjoy your day more, I think.
And those 3 knots are?
Oh, I mean, some kind of tippet to tippet, whether it be a blood knot or a surgeon's, call it a clinch knot. I prefer a non-improved.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, I just think it seats better than an improved.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, just start with those 2 or 3, right?
Yeah.
You'll find yourself in a far happier place when you do, because like then you want to be comfortable. Like fish love, like, especially nice brown trout, love sitting in cover. So like not being afraid to like, I don't want to actually make the cast that I think will catch the fish. I'll just pull it back a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to lose the fly, because it's like a pain to retie the fly. It's like if you remove that part of that from your vocabulary, it's like, oh, plug it in there. Oh, I caught the wood. No big deal. Crack it off, tie a new fly. Plug it in there. Oh, there's the fish.
Nice. Okay. Interesting. I'd love to watch you fish someday. That would be really fun. Russ, tell us what's going on at Umpqua.
Well, we are experiencing, a big boom of fly fishermen coming into the sport and anglers entering in for the first time, and people picking rods back up and kind of sorting through their fly boxes. So it's an exciting time for Umpqua. We're excited to meet demand for the sport and kind of give them all of the materials outside of the rod, reel, and line to go out and experience the water and have a great time. And a lot of that at the center of that is the flies that we do. And I think the really exciting thing for Umpqua this year, more than anything else, is our 50-year anniversary. And so for 50 years, we've been sending anglers out on the water with signature patterns, which is really cool.
That? Yeah, great. Well, that's cause for celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're incredibly thankful. Umpqua was the first company to implement a signature tire program. So we pay a royalty for each dozen flies that get sold at retail to the person that created the fly, right?
Okay.
And so it was a very revolutionary model at the time to kind of get these regional patterns or patterns that had been kind of close to the vest, like in fly bins. But it's been incredibly successful. So we're super thankful for a lot of these longstanding partnerships and that we still have with some of the original tires that from 50 years ago, guys like Mike Lawson, is a really big one of those folks. Randall Kaufman, the guy that started the stimulator, which just is kind of a staple in a lot of people's boxes. Someone came up with that years ago, a guy named Randall Kaufman, and it's still an extremely relevant, great selling pattern for Umpqua today.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Any new products coming out that you want to tell us about?
Every year we have an unbelievable selection of new innovative flies that are just kind of those gotta have fish catchers that you got to put on the rig to see if they're going to eat it. So we do that every year, and then we try to support that with a lot of our category extensions. So we take the flies at the center of our universe, and then from there, fly tying is a big component for us. We've got a bunch of new fly tying stuff. Right now we're selling our new XC210 hook and our jig bombs, which are beads that they're 20% heavier than a standard bead for the same size. So they just access the depths a lot easier. And then, from fly tying, we moved into fly storage, right? And fly boxes. And we've got a ton of great foam and TPE options, everything from small little midges on magnetic panels all the way up to like big fly, musky fly storage for your boat. Pack and bag is another one of our categories, stream site accessories. And so we're always kind of plugging in some new stuff into each one of those categories most years.
Okay. Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love that brand. Well, good luck with all that. And I'm kind of curious, my last question, or one of my last, I'll probably come up with another one after this, but I bet you've got a family that really is along for the ride with this, because you obviously spend a lot of time on the water. And I just wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. My wife's my biggest supporter, and now my two kids. But yeah, we try to do a lot of family time on the water, and
for you,
which is great. My boys love it at the moment, and if they choose to ever pick up fly fishing, they'll have every opportunity, and they insert themselves often, which is great.
Okay.
So we go out on the boat a lot around here, and whether it be some reservoir fishing out of the boat or float fishing down the river, and just try to make the most of our day. And it's great. Yeah, no, they're my best fans and throughout this whole thing.
Good for you. That's great. All right. So you got any off the beaten path, watering holes, restaurants for hungry, thirsty anglers you could tell us about up and down the towns up and down the South Platte?
Sure. If you're going to be fish and cheeseman, you got to stop at Zoka's on the way home. It's I think their mascot's a koala. It's right there in Pine Junction. That's a great place for a pint and a burger. I joke with my boys, we get bear burgers there. Even though they don't serve bear, that's what we order. So that's a great little spot. And then there's in Hartselle. So if you're fishing the Dream Stream, Spinney, or in Taro, and you want an awesome pizza, there's I don't know the name of it, but there's an unbelievable pizza place down there. And we've gone in there and we've shared some good fishing stories, and he's just like, you're good. And he's paid for our pizza and beers.
Really? My gosh.
Oh yeah. An unbelievable owner. And he's owned the place for a few years now. And, but it makes a great pizza, and I'm a sucker for a good pizza, especially after, one of those cold, windy days out in South Park.
Yeah. Okay. Those are ones. Yeah.
Yeah, but those are great ones. And, I would say, the smaller, the better. Stay away from the subways if you can.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, good. Well, how can people get in touch with you or learn more about Umpqua?
Yeah, you should go to umpqua.com and keep an eye on that. Our social media, we're at Umpqua Feather Merchants, because next year we'll be publicly celebrating our 50th anniversary. And you're not going to want to miss out on stories about hearing about, some of the patterns that are writing the modern history of fly fishing, right? Patterns like the Deceiver, right, from Lefty, patterns like the Clouser, the Merkin, a lot of Whitlock's patterns, and and even stories about like the gold bead coming to the market for the first time in the 90s, and how that coincided with the river runs through it boom of new anglers, and this ability to actually catch fish. And I talked about nymphing so much today, and most all of my nymphs have beads on them to help them think. And Umpqua delivered the first bead to anglers in the mid 90s. And before that, it was, some lead wraps around the hook shank. And, Mike Lawson talking about the first time he saw the bead on a hook. And he said, what trout in their right mind would eat that?
All of them.
And now, it's what we fish. It's, exactly. I find there's confidence in a good bead color.
Yeah. Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so anyway, you should find us on social. We're on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and follow along, because it's Umpqua's 50th is an unbelievable story that truly shapes the modern history of fly fishing. And so follow along as we start telling that. And you can get me at Umpqua. I'm easy to find. We're a small family-owned business, so. They know me there, unfortunately. So if you ever need to get a hold of me, if you have any questions, you can find me. You can hit always our CS at umpqua.com, and they'll route it directly to me.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Russ, I feel like we just barely scratched the surface with all you know about trout fishing in the South Platte River and a few other things in the history of trout fishing and flies and whatnot. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And for all the listeners that made it this far, thank you for hanging in there. I hope you learned a couple things, and come down to Colorado and experience all the South Platte has to offer.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I wish you extraordinary success in all your ventures to follow. And folks, thank you for listening. We'll be sure to post all this info on the Destination Angler show notes. And maybe we get some pictures of some of those flies that Russ was talking about to put out there as well. Feel free to DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at s850@gmail.com. If you like the show, hey, tag a buddy, let them know about it. As always, our music is by a Brothers Fountain, and I hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea, but I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.